Welcome to Brooker Ceramics, and this week we've been making these tiny little rice bowls. I really like the form because you've got this nice kind of natural bowl shape in the centre, and then underneath you've got this kind of quite tall foot. And this is really important because as you're eating rice you want to be able to kind of hold it like that, so you need a slight lip under here like that to grab onto, and then a bowl at the top so that when you're eating you can hold it like so. I've really enjoyed making these. I quite like the shape and the form. So this week I'm going to show you how I made this, give you some of my thoughts and tips as I went through the process and lessons that I've learned. So if you're interested in making one of these, they're really easy, great for beginners. So make sure you stay tuned and watch to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed. And if it's a video you want to watch more of in the future, drop me a like and a subscribe, and let me know in the comments if there are any other kind of bowls or objects you'd like me to make in the future. So for this design, we're looking for a nice kind of round bowl shape like that. And because it's a rice bowl, I'm going to put a little bit of a foot on it, which will allow the person to kind of grip it like that. So it'll have a hollow bit here, as well as that. So for the height, we're looking at around 7 centimeters, and for the width, we're looking at around 13 centimeters. So let's give it a go. So we've got our ball of clay weighed out. For this one, we're doing around 600 grams. It's going to be quite a small bowl. You can see here is one that I've made earlier. And the aim is that you can hold the bowl around the top and around the bottom whilst you're kind of eating your rice. So what I need to do for this is make sure that it's got quite a deep base and then a relatively kind of round, small bowl shaped form at the top here. So let's zoom you in, and I'll go through the initial process of coning and centering before then opening up the clay. So just like with any vessel or object, I begin by coning and centering the clay, making sure it's spinning nice and centrally on the potter's wheel. So now that I've centered the clay, if I turn the wheel on and run my finger over it, it should relatively spin quite smoothly on top of the clay ball. For this piece, it's got a very narrow base, so to make the most use of the clay and reduce the trimming that needs later, what I want to do now is push in the area that comes into contact with the bat and push it in slightly, so when I go to open up the clay in a bit, it doesn't, we're not wasting lots of clay around the edge. So what I want to do is a similar process for coning and centering. It's just kind of pulling it in, using my hands and cupping it around the edge, and that will force the clay inwards. I'll most likely also use my index finger to just kind of push that in. So let's take a look at that now. As you can see, I'm just collaring in the ball of clay, trying to push it in as much as possible. Using my index finger, I create a slight indent at the bottom of the bowl where it touches the wooden bat, and just letting the clay run underneath my hand there to ensure that the surface is nice and flat too. Once the ball of clay is settled, it's time to begin pressing my thumb into the clay, pushing it down and beginning to open it up. For this, I want to make sure I'm leaving about 1 inch to 1.5 inches at the bottom, and this will allow enough space left for me to cut in the foot later on. So I've got the desired depth, and now I'll begin opening up the clay, pulling out the walls till I've got the bottom of that base form. Just correcting for a slight wobble and compressing the base with my fingers. Once I've got the desired height and opened as much as I like, I just want to collar it in slightly, and that'll help me pinch it later. So now that I've opened up the clay, what I want to do is create that bowl form. So first I'll raise the walls diagonally upwards and it will slope in, and that will allow me to reach the desired height of the bowl whilst keeping the base very narrow. Once I've achieved that, I'll then come in and begin to open up the clay. So I'll transition from kind of pinching it up like that to pinching it up and pulling it out like so into that bowl form that I showed you earlier. So let's take a look. And just like when throwing a bowl, I want to pinch the walls up to the desired height. It's really important that I do this nice and slowly so that the walls are even and they don't wobble. I've been trying to attempt to pull the walls as infrequently as possible. So rather than doing lots of small mini ones, it's a couple of more confident long pulls. Now that I've got the bowl to the right height, it's time to start opening it up and pushing it out. So it's really important when I was initially pulling up the walls that I keep the rim of the bowl quite thick, because as you start to pull it out, that rim will get thinner and thinner. Finally, to just tidy up the edges, I'll pinch it with my index fingers, and you can see here it creates a nice smooth surface around the top. Removing the excess slip with the sponge is another really important step because it will help the bowl dry out much more evenly. Sometimes I like to use a wooden or metal kidney on the outside of the bowl, but for these I thought it was important, given the odd shape, to just use a sponge. Finally, just tidying up the feet there so it's better and easier to trim later. I'll then score a wire underneath the bowl, and this will allow me to lift it off once it's dried leather hard. So now that I've got the basic bowl form thrown, it's ready to be set aside and allowed to dry leather hard over a few days. With the base being so thick, I need to make sure that I dry it out slowly so that the rim of the bowl dries at roughly an even rate to the base itself. So what I'll probably do is put it in, I've got a little container box here in front of my wheel. I'll put them in there to dry out leather hard. But after a day, I'll probably flip it so that I can get some more air to the base of the bowl itself. So we'll come back in a couple of days when it's ready to be trimmed and begin tidying up and cutting in the feet. A few days later, and the vessel is now nice and leather hard and ready to be trimmed up. What I want to do is come in and attach it to the wheel securely, and then I can trim down the sides and work in that nice deep foot that we need for that rice bowl to give the person something to hold on to. I've been drying these out really slowly because the base here of the clay itself is quite thick, whereas the walls are much thinner. So to ensure that the clay's dried out nice and slowly and evenly, I've dried it out for probably around a week in its own little container box, which is in front of the wheel here. And that allows me to dry it out super slow, so that the entire clay body is the same kind of dryness all the way throughout. If I was to dry it out in air normally, you'd find that the rim would dry first and that the base would still be wet and I wouldn't be able to trim it. And this would present a lot of problems when I came to trim it later. So I've dried it out nice and slowly for the past few days, which has been quite a challenge because I just wanted to, trim these up and get them nice and finished. I've actually already trimmed up one of these and I'm going to show you how that looks now so you can compare them side by side. Here's a more kind of finished one. You can see that it's got its foot all cut in and the walls are nice and trim, as well as the foot itself. And here's that that more blank bowl shape, which I'm going to trim up now so you can kind of compare the two there for examples. So I'm going to zoom you in and we're going to take a look at the pottery wheel now. To attach the bowl, I want to just paste down some slip really thinly on the wheel, and I'll place the vessel on top and begin centering it. Once I've got it nice and centre, I just give it a light tap on the top and it's on to trimming. First, I trim down the top of the vessel before just tidying up the little skirt that's formed from the throwing process. I'll then run the tool across the surface, just tidying it all up. For this, it's really important to have a nice sharp angle between where the feet and the bottom of the bowl sit, so just spending some time cutting that in now. After the surface of the bowl is all trimmed up and ready to go, it's time to start cutting in the feet. Because I can't apply that downward pressure to the bowl, I was a bit mindful that it might slip when cutting in the feet. Because I'm removing a lot of material, it can put a bit of weight and drag on the bowl. So I just applied a little bit of clay to the outside, and this will just hold it in place and stop the bowl from spinning. I'll continue to remove bits of material bit by bit until I've got the required depth, then tidying it up with this black tool here. I want to make sure that the rim is nice and delicate because you'll be holding on to it more so than a regular bowl. So I want to make it nice and thin, as well as burnishing the sides with my fingers. Now just running a little metal tool along the edge, it will allow me to pop the bowl off the turning wheel, pottery wheel. But what will have happened throughout that process is now that the rim will be relatively flat. So I'll need to come back in with a sponge and just soften up those edges a little bit, taking it from quite a sharp edge to more of a rounded bowl edge. The wet sponge will allow me to just remove little bits of clay and create that nice curved shape for the edge of my bowl's rim. And here's the final piece. I made a couple of these rice bowls throughout the course of the weekend. They're really quick and quite easy to make. And I got a lot of satisfaction from the final finished pieces. I can't wait to fire them and get them all glazed up. So if you made it this far in the video, you're part of our super secret club who make it to the end of the videos. So a big thank you to you guys for watching all the way to the end. And if this is you, drop in the comments below Super Ceramic Club, and I'll make sure to kind of reach out and celebrate the fact that you made it this far. So hope you guys enjoyed and look forward to seeing you in the next one.